Hey guys, in this video, I want to talk to you about a couple of ways, two ways to structure your personal narrative essay or your college application essay. Um, for today, I had asked you to read three model essays, including these two here. These are the two essays that I'm going to be breaking down for you in this video. So if you haven't read these two essays yet, go ahead and stop this video and just read through those. They're not very long, but you'll want to have those. You want to have those read before you go through this video, because then the video will make more sense to you. Now, I chose these two essays for a few different reasons. One, I think they're both good examples of how to write about work. And I know that some of you, if not a lot of you, are working right now. You have jobs right now, or maybe you work in the summers. And work experience can be a great source of material for a personal narrative essay. A lot of growth and maturity happens in those first jobs that we get, as we learn about in these two essays. So, if you currently work, or if you've had a lot of jobs, you might think about using some experiences from work um, for your essay. In fact, what I'll do, um, I'll uh, I'll I'll send you guys or post a couple model essays that I got from students last semester about their experiences at work. They'll be optional reads, but I think they serve as good examples for how to do that. The other reason why I chose these two essays is because they offer, they're both about work, but they are actually organized in two very different ways. So they are good examples of these two different types of structures that you could use. And, the structure you ultimately use for your essay is going to depend on the prompt that you're responding to, and I'll talk about that at the end of this video. Okay, the first method for structuring your essay, you might call this the beginning, middle, and end method, or the plot method, or then even just the narrative method. You guys recognize this, right? Yeah, I think you all probably know this really well. This is a basic plot diagram. Okay, and the idea here is most stories tend to follow this kind of general arc, this general progression. Here it is with the labels. Um, and if we think about this, how does the book we just read fit this structure? Um, think about the climax of 1984. I would say the climax of 1984 was Winston in Room 101. And he finally breaks down under the threat of being eaten by rats, and betrays Julia. And then, of course, that's it for him. He's no longer resisting the party. And then the last chapter ultimately is the falling action and the resolution. And we see Winston. Um, he's out of jail, he's out of prison. He's a completely changed person. He's at the Chestnut Tree Cafe where he feels most comfortable. And this is, of course, where all of the people who tried to betray the party and get caught end up going. And then we see him. Kind of last image of him is he is crying gin and loving Big Brother. So not a happy ending, but that would be the resolution of that book. I think the exposition. The exposition. It's hard to say when that ends, but I think you might say that the inciting incident, the thing that kind of propels him forward on this journey of resistance, would be writing in his journal. That's when his dreams start to come back, uh, and it's sort of the first act he takes against the party, or an act of rebellion against the party, is to write in his journal there. And then, of course, the everything else in between chapter 1 and chapter 2 would be the rising action there. So I don't want to belabor this too much, but what I do want to do is think about how this might apply to a personal narrative essay. Okay, um, we could look at this plot structure even more basically than this. Okay, we could divide this plot structure, or really any plot, into three different stages, as it were. Okay. Um, and typically these lines would be drawn, right about here, just after the inciting incident. That's sort of the separation between these first two, and then just after the climax, that would be the last separation there. By the way, in film and in cinema or screenwriting, you might refer to this as a three-act plot structure. But even more basically than that, we would just label these different stages: the beginning, the middle, and the end. Okay. All stories have this. They have a beginning. We might call that the exposition. They have a middle, and this is usually the longest part of the story. And then we have the end. Okay. And the end, typically in any story, the end isn't very long, just because once the climax is done, um, they don't really want to stick around anymore. Um, so the beginning, the middle, and the end. How could we apply this to the personal narrative essay? If this is a basic narrative structure, then can we look at a narrative essay in terms of a beginning, a middle, and end? Not all of them, but many essays do, I think, follow a structure like this. So let me ask you guys this: in the two essays that we talked about yesterday, where was the point or the thesis of those essays? Was it in the beginning? Was it in the middle? Was it in the end? It was in the end, right? One of the things I've emphasized here is that often, not always, but often, the point of a personal narrative essay doesn't really become clear until the end. Especially if you're writing an essay about your own personal growth, your own struggle with an internal conflict. Well, if this is the conflict, right, then the point of that is the resolution of that conflict, and that's not going to make sense until after that conflict has kind of been developed. And so that's why, in an essay about change or growth, going through some kind of a struggle or conflict, that point isn't really going to come up until the very end. Okay. So in an essay like this, if you're dealing with a conflict, you're writing about growth, this is kind of how we might think about these three stages: the beginning, the middle, and the end. The beginning of the essay is where the writer explores the way they used to be. Okay. And then the end of the essay, I'll just jump to that. The end of the essay is, of course, how they are now. Okay. How they are different from the way that they used to be. In the middle of the essay, then, is exploring what they went through. What were those significant moments of change? What were the major trials that they went through that helped them learn, help them grow, help them mature? Okay. Let's take a look real quick at just how this structure applies to one of the essays that we talked about yesterday, A Wider Lens. This is the one by Gillian, who wrote the story about perspective, right? Going to India, encountering the symbol of the swastika. This is how we might kind of break down or boil down her essay into these three phases. So first, the beginning is her exploring how she used to be insecure about her eye, and also not very culturally aware. Okay. And then the middle would be this part, right? And she goes to India, she encounters the swastika at her host family's house, right? And that's sort of this moment where she has to reckon with the two different perspectives on the same symbol. Okay. And this is kind of the thing, at least in her story, the big moment that kind of helps her learn and grow. And then, of course, the end, where she makes her point, is now she embraces her disability and she understands the beauty of perspective. Okay. So there it is: the beginning, the middle, and the end. And if you were to go back to that essay, to the copy of the essay that I gave you, you'd see that the beginning and the middle are kind of equal in length, and the end is really short. And I'd say that's pretty typical. Okay. All right. Let's apply this, though, to one of the essays that we read for today. So the first of those, Retail Therapy, by Paul Maines. Um, this one actually does a good job of following this structure too. So I want to kind of skip over to that one. Um, here we go. I want to skip over to the essay here that you have, the PDF file here. And I just want to kind of show you how retail therapy follows that same beginning, middle, end structure. So if I had to draw a line and take those two lines, if I had to draw a line and separate the beginning from the middle, I would probably do that. Let's grab one of my lines here. I'd probably do that right about. It's gonna work. There we go. It's not gonna come. Come on. Down here. Nope. Maybe that will work. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to grab this line. I would probably bring it right around. Let's just divide these two paragraphs here for the sake of ease. Okay, so why there? Why would I put it there? Well, if you look at the way that he writes here. He says, oh, by the way, let me back up just a little bit. So this essay is about his work experience and something that he learned through his experience on the job working at CVS. And if you don't know what CVS is, it's like a Walgreens. And so he starts out saying, "I am in retail hell." Okay, and that is because he, as he says here, he's a bit shy. He's a bit uncomfortable talking to other people. Okay, he suffers from social anxiety, and of course, as you know, in customer service, he has to talk to a lot of people. So he says, they terrify me. He asks question, do you have a CVS card? I ask timidly, my voice nervous and quavering. But it isn't until this moment here, at the very top of the second page of the essay, where things start to shift. Okay, and he says, but after the third, let me speak to your manager in a single day, I noticed a peculiar absence of the anxiety I usually felt in such a situation. And it was then when I realized that I was gaining more from my CVS experience than just money. Okay. So there's a significant shift in his attitude and his outlook at this moment right here. Okay, and then from here he goes on to describe later experiences where he begins to change. Okay, an 8-hour shift seemed more like 8 hours rather than longer. Okay, paychecks were rewarding, but I found myself more and more looking forward to the work itself. Customer issues became routine and painless. See, he's starting to change now, right? He's starting to grow out of those old patterns. And here he then goes into these great details about how being on the job, he's starting to make some connections to things he was learning about in school, and so it makes work a little bit more interesting. Okay, so I'd say if I were to have to pinpoint where we shift from the beginning to the middle, it would be right about here. Okay? So let me go ahead and just do this. Drawing. Just make a little bracket here. Oh. Beginning. I'd say probably all of that. Right there's the beginning, even up through here. Beginning. And then this part here would be down a little bit further. That'll work for now. This would be the middle. Okay. So then the next question is, where do we draw the other line? Where does the middle end and the end begin? if I were to have to draw that line, I would probably put it, let's see here, there we go. Right there, right before the last paragraph. And there's a pretty obvious clue here, and that's the word now. Okay. Now. So again, remember the end of an essay like this explores the way the writer is now, as opposed to the way that they used to be. And so Maines writes, "Now I look forward to my 8-hour shifts. Okay? Darting eyes and nervous laughter are things of the past." Okay? He asks with cool confidence, textbook perfect cashier smile. He says, still there are many times when I'm the center of attention, but the brightness of the spotlight no longer blinds me. Look at that. And so this last paragraph, I would say, is the end of the essay. Okay, this is where we clearly see that he has changed. Okay, he's no longer the anxious Paul, nervous and timid that he was in the beginning of the essay. Okay, and of course the point of this essay is at the end. Okay, it's not at the beginning; it's at the end of the essay. Right here, right? It's the ability to hand the teller my deposit slip with an untrembling hand. It's not working. It's the ability to hand the teller my deposit slip with an untrembling hand, the fearlessness with which I look her in the eye, and the anxiety-free smile that I give her when I wish her a nice day. These are the true rewards of my job. Okay. So there it is. There it is. This essay is a great example. Just like a wider lens, it's a great example of how you can use this beginning, middle, end structure to explore an experience that helped you grow or mature. Okay, let's go back to our slides real quick. Let's talk about method 2. Okay, now method 2 is a completely different kind of format. Okay, and in a way, this one's going to sort of break some rules, at least as far as the previous format that we just looked at. So you might call method 2 the 5-paragraph format. And as the name suggests, this is a way to structure your essay that kind of resembles an academic essay. So it is possible to write a personal narrative essay using the 5-paragraph structure. Okay, so this is essentially your 5-paragraph structure. Okay, your first paragraph is in your introduction. Then you have 3 body paragraphs, which usually explore supporting ideas or supporting examples, and then you have your conclusion. Okay, typically your introduction will end with your thesis statement. Okay, it'll tell your readers the point that you're going to prove through the course of that essay, and then in your conclusion, you always want to do more than just restate your introduction, restate your thesis, and usually you expand on it in some way. And of course, within those body paragraphs, you are exploring examples or evidence. You're giving examples, and you're explaining how those examples and that evidence proves your thesis. Yeah. Well, this is essentially this is the idea of this structure applied to personal narrative essays. Okay. The other essay I asked you to read today, Life Lessons at Dunkin' Donuts. It's the second essay about the writer's experience at work. This one is a great example of how you can structure an essay, personal narrative essay, using the 5-paragraph format. So let's jump over to that essay really quick. Okay. Here we go. Okay, now I already kind of did some color coding highlights here, and I'll just add some annotations as we go. Okay, so if this essay follows the 5-paragraph format, then that means our first paragraph here is our introduction, and that is pretty clear if we just take a quick look at it. So the first sentence of this essay says, "My summer job at Dunkin' Donuts has taught me many things." Okay, so right away, this writer's not starting with a story; he's starting with a topic sentence. And he's telling us what, in general, this essay is going to be about, which is what he learned from his summer job. Yeah. Then it goes on to say, after scooping more than 800 ice creams, making more than 1,200 cups of coffee, I've become an expert at serving all our specialties really fast. The commuters, the Little League teams can count on me and my colleagues to fill their order quickly. So he's saying here, one of the things I've learned is how to serve our products very quickly, and I've become good at my job. And then there's this important turn here when he says "but." Okay, but beyond the details of serving customers and maintaining the store, I've realized some very important truths about working people and hard economic realities. Maybe America runs on Dunkin', but Dunkin' runs on the energy of low-paid, hard-working people. Okay, so here it is, guys. This is, I would say, this is a general thesis or a general point. Right there. That's it. And when I say general, what I mean is he's not telling us exactly what those very important truths are. He just says he's realized some important truths. So he's kind of like hinting at the point without giving the point away entirely. Okay, but nevertheless, this is an introductory paragraph, kind of a conventional introduction. Tells us what the general topic is, gives us an example of that, but then gets to the real topic, which are these lessons here. Okay, here's the other more important thing that I've learned, some important truths about working people and economic injustice. Okay. Now, if you look at the next 3 paragraphs, those would each be body paragraphs. And basically, what those paragraphs do is they give 3 different examples of how he learned these truths. He describes, in fact, he focuses each of these paragraphs on a different person that he has worked with. First paragraph here, he discusses his supervisor, Alfredo. And he gives us some good details about Alfredo's life, and he's ultimately, what he's getting from this here is what he says at the end of the paragraph. I have gained so much respect for his work ethic and values. Many people fail to appreciate the hard work and effort that people like Alfredo exhibit for such inadequate pay. And so his first body paragraph is all about Alfredo and how Alfredo has kind of helped him learn these lessons. Then his second body paragraph focuses on another person, Jackie, his coworker. Like Alfredo, she also works hard to support a daughter. She's only 20 years old, works 80 hours a week, depends on her overtime salary just to make her ends meet. She demonstrates optimism, keeps moving forward. And the key thing about this person that he focuses on here is that is how he kind of feels in relation to her. Okay? He says, I feel sheepish when I ask her to let me leave work early to study because my stress seems so minor compared to all of her daily pressures. Okay? So he's not just writing about Jackie. He's not just writing about Alfredo. He's writing about them because they are their experiences are kind of prompting him to look at himself in a different way. Okay? And so his last sentence is kind of his takeaway from his time with Jackie. He says, this experience has made me realize how lucky I am to be prioritizing my academic record because I am fortunate enough to be planning to attend college. So this is kind of a humble moment for him, right? He confronts his own privilege and feels lucky for that there. And then the last paragraph, the people that he points to here are the owners of the business next door, the Bagel Emporium. They come in, they put on a game, and they say that they're friendly to us, even though they've lost business to Dunkin' Donuts. And this is why it's important, why he mentions it. He says, this makes me understand why so many communities fight big name stores like Walmart. I've gained a total respect for working people. Now I will always leave big tips. I will also shop at a local establishments rather than a chain, despite the fact that I work for one now. So, his interactions with the business owners next door have helped him see the struggles between local business owners and these big chains that have a lot more power and a lot more money. Okay, so that's another kind of you might say economic reality or economic injustice that he's become aware of through his time there. Okay. And then now in the conclusion, he doesn't just say, these are some important truths I've learned, but he goes on, he actually elaborates on this. He's more specific. He says, I understand that capitalism provides a wonderful opportunity for businesses, yet I now have more questions about the injustices that can occur in the pursuit of profits. And then he does this really clever thing here, and he ties it to some possible goals he has, maybe going into business in college, which is going to look even better for his readers there. And so let's jump back, if we can, to our slideshow here. Okay, so real quick, so the introduction then in life lessons at Dunkin' Donuts kind of goes over how, or tells us that the essay is going to be about what he learned at work. And the most important thing that he learned, of course, is about working people and social justice. First supporting idea really is his first example, which is his supervisor, Alfredo. And he notes especially that Alfredo's kind to him, respectful, very patient, even though his life is more comfortable than Alfredo's. And he really notes Alfredo's work ethic. Okay. Second supporting idea would be Jackie, or supporting example would be Jackie. And of course, the big thing that he kind of takes away from his experience with Jackie is that it's helped him kind of recognize and appreciate his own privilege. Yeah. And then third supporting idea, of course, would be that the owners of the Bagel Emporium next door have kind of helped him appreciate local businesses. Okay, and is really his eyes have been opened to that fight between the local and the national chains. Okay? And in the conclusion, then, is just an elaboration on the general point that he made in the beginning. So there it is. There is an excellent example of how you might be able to organize this essay in a more conventional method, 5-paragraph method. So then the last question here is, what structure should you use? Okay, how do you know? If you had to choose between one of these two, which one would make the most sense? Well, for that, let's just take a quick look at our prompts. Okay, so here they are. By the way, these prompts come directly from the Common App website, and you guys will be using that next year. So this essay is a great way to get started on the essay that you're really going to be sending out next year to colleges. So I'll say this, that there are really maybe 2 or 3 of these prompts that would be good prompts if you're using, or good prompts to use the narrative structure for. Okay, the first one would be number 2. Okay, the lessons we take from obstacles we encounter can be fundamental to later success. Recount a time when you faced a challenge, setback, or failure. What did you learn from that experience? Okay, so that question right there is really, if you answer that question, you're probably going to be writing an essay about growth, okay, about learning, because you're focused on a challenge, right? Failure is always kind of a test of character. And so, so you're going to be, kind of, I think, inevitably talking about how you were before you encountered that failure, then how did you work through that setback or that challenge, and then how did you change as a result of that? So this would be a great one for that beginning, middle, and end structure. Number 3 might actually be one to use that for that structure as well. Reflect on a time when you questioned or challenged a belief or idea. Okay. What prompted your thinking? What was the outcome? I think another way to approach this would be to say reflect on a time when something challenged one of your beliefs, or a preconceived idea that you've had. Okay. So again, there's the idea of challenge in this prompt, so that might be one to use that beginning, middle, and end structure for there. And the other one would be number 5. Discuss an accomplishment, event, or realization that sparked, here it is, a period of personal growth and a new understanding of yourself or others. Okay, so 2, 3, and 5 would be great ones here for. I'll just write this down real quick. Okay, let's say method 1. On method 1. So if you're going to do prompts 2, 3, or 5, you might find yourself using method 1, or I would maybe even recommend using method 1 to structure that. Okay? As far as the other ones go, you might be able to use that 5-paragraph format. This could, the background, identity, or interest, or talent so meaningful. Yeah, if you wanted to describe, say, something you do in your free time that defines you, you could maybe pick 3 important elements of that, three things you gain from that experience, and those would be your body paragraphs. Okay, or maybe there are 3 interests you want to talk about. And those could be your body paragraphs. Here's another one, number 6. You could probably use your 5-paragraph format here. Describe a topic, idea, or concept you find so engaging and makes you lose all track of time. Why does it captivate you? The why. So you maybe have 3 reasons, or even 2 reasons if you want to just like a 4-paragraph essay. But those could be your body paragraphs as well. Okay. So again, in general here, when you are thinking about how to structure, you really need to think about which prompt you're using. Because some of these prompts, I would say, probably wouldn't lend themselves well to, say, a 5-paragraph essay. I think that period of personal growth one, I would maybe recommend not using a 5-paragraph format for that and just using method 1. So yeah, so that's the point. That's the takeaway right there, guys. So once you decide on what your prompt is, then you want to be thinking about which method of structuring it you want to use. Okay, so we didn't talk about the third essay, but that is actually going to be what I'm going to ask you to think about in your attendance assignment for today. And so one of the questions I'm going to ask you on that is, how do you think that essay is structured? Is it like one of these 2 methods here, or does it follow some other sort of pattern that you might notice? So you want to look most closely at the way that it's organized there. And I will say this too, that essay does not have a conflict. Okay. And so that kind of presents an interesting challenge there. Not all personal narrative essays have to have a conflict. And you can see that here. If you were to choose prompt number 6, that prompt really isn't asking you to focus on a conflict. It's just asking you to describe something that you do that's so engaging it makes you lose all track of time. So it's asking you to explain why it captivates you. So if you write about something like that, then you're probably not going to be exploring a conflict. And if you're not exploring a conflict, then you're probably not going to use that first method of organizing the essay. Okay, that does it for this video. Thanks for listening and for being patient, guys. See you later.